Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Hard Claim with Viva La Sam. I'm Sam, and this is a show where we talk to people who play Blood on the Clocktower and get their player perspective of the game. And joining us for this week's episode is Angelo. Thank you for joining.
Hello, Sam. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much.
Yeah, so we'll get started here. We have a script that you co-wrote by Angelo and Nick, The Squall of Cthulhu. When I looked up the script, I realized I had ran it before, and we'd recently put up a YouTube video of it. It's very good. Encourage everybody to watch that. But yeah, I remember having fun running the script. So we sent out characters. So on my end, you have the Oho token, but that's not what the token you received. You received the Lunatic token, which is completely random. I do honestly send out characters randomly when I do these interviews. But the important part for this script is that there's a Stormcatcher, and it does favor the Lunatic. So it's a very Lunatic-focused script. So with that said, night one, I would let you know that you are the Oho. I can give you some bluffs if you want. I haven't really thought about it. Let's say Village Idiot, Undertaker, and Mayor. Why not? Those are your bluffs.
Village Idiot, Undertaker, and Mayor.
And then you would learn your Lunatic. It's seat 4. You would.
The Lunatic.
This is probably the most night one setup I've ever done for a fake game. You would not learn your minions because of course.
Okay. Of course.
But you would wake up to see that seat 12 is the Vizier.
Seat 12 is the Vizier.
Yep.
Wow.
All right. With all of that said, if we're chatting day one, and of course you maybe I'm on your team, maybe I'm not. You wouldn't even know. What would you claim to me?
I would probably. It depends on the mood that I'm in, if I want to go with a bluff or not. And it also depends on this script. It depends on if I think I'm actually a demon. I know that I saw the Lunatic token, which means that I'm probably the demon. But there's absolutely ways that lunatics can draw lunatic tokens. And I'd probably err on the side of saying I'm the actual demon. So we'll find home base with that. I'd probably just go Village Idiot, especially that there's a Poppy Grower in play. I would want to know who else is going Village Idiot, because it's a popular thing for minions who don't know who their demon is,
right?
To claim. Obviously, it's an easy thing for anyone to claim, but if I can get my foot in the door with some conversations with a VI claim, and then go with socials from there on if I think that they're on my team or not, then that's probably, I think, the best way to go about it, with these bluffs at least.
And Village Idiot's a good claim for a politician too. So it could be something else you could be eyeing. I find that interesting. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm curious since Oho, I'm kind of a fan of the Oho, mostly just because I think it's fun to play. I know a lot of people think it's weak, and maybe it is. I don't know. I am curious how you think it plays with lunatics. I know a lot of people aren't a fan of rules as written. Basically, just to go over it, lunatic chooses a character. If that character is in play, then they've targeted a player, and the demon learns that player. But and then if they choose an out-of-play character, they haven't targeted anybody, so the demon learns nothing. How do you feel that works in the game?
I love that personally. I think that's really cool. I think that if there's a rather niche but possible interaction on this script where if the demon can get a lunatic on side, obviously that's heavy gaslighting with that, and the lunatic saw Oho, if the real demon knows what the lunatic is going to pick that night, as in what character, then the demon now knows what character the Oho selected and what player that corresponds to. It's extremely niche, and it doesn't have. I've never seen it happen, but it's like a really cool, like, budget spy kind of thing, which I'm waiting to see that happen one day. That would be a really cool thing. But in terms of just the general interaction, I think it makes sense. The Oho is selecting a character, but the lunatic has to tell a person choice to to the demon. I think it's also fine if folks want to do it the other way, but it becomes like a weird meta, I guess, because if the lunatic is a different demon than what you are, now you're a vigor learning that your lunatic selected innkeeper. That doesn't super help you as
Yeah.
any other demon.
Yeah,
So
I guess it means an innkeeper's in play.
yeah,
Maybe I don't know.
yeah, no, I mean that's a legitimate thing. And then if you don't really care what about stringing along the lunatic, which is totally valid on this script, you could just use the lunatic as like a in play character detector. That's actually kind of cool, Sam. I don't think I've ever thought of that before. I like that.
Well, it wasn't how I was trying to go with it, but I guess that's fair. No, and I agree. I think there's pros and cons of both ways, but I think it works fine as is. I'm usually of the opinion that if it's not broke, it doesn't need a house rule. I try to avoid house rules at all costs. Usually, if I think it needs a house rule, I just try not to put on the script in general. Not everybody feels that way, and that's totally fine. But
Speaking of,
yeah. Oh yeah, go ahead. I don't even know what the bootlegger is here for. So talk about the bootlegger, I guess, while we're at it.
yeah, so the bootlegger's here for a very generic and well-known thing. There's nothing special or unique about the script. It's the poppy grower. There is a poppy grower in the script with a poisoner, with a pucka, with a farmer. The bootlegger effectively does the poppy grower fix, if some people call it. I know I call it that way, where if the poppy grower dies while drunk or poisoned, and I've even extended the bootlegger to include if the poppy grower is removed from play. So if you straw pass from a farmer to a poppy grower, that will still trigger the demons and minions, the demon and minions, to learn who they are. That's what that bootlegger is for. I think that it's just a little bit more fun to do it that way. I think it's more in the spirit of the character, and I think that it doesn't make too much sense for a pucka to basically never be able to learn their team with a poppy grower. Well, I mean, not never. They'd have to get them executed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I've come around to it. I've never thought that bootlegger role is a bad role. Just again, I usually prefer to just avoid interactions altogether. But I've come, I have ran this script, so I ran this bootlegger because why wouldn't I if I'm running the script? Yeah, it makes sense. I think it's really common. I don't know. We're getting into what I think about the game, but a lot of house rules I think just aren't necessary. That's one I think makes sense, and yeah.
I agree.
All right. Well, so let's go back in time a bit. How did you discover Blow on the Clocktower?
So I'm a big board game fan, just in general. Not as big as Nina. Nina's a huge board game fan, but I have something like 250 board games or so, which is not nothing. And I've built that kind of hobby, if you will, that collection over the years. And one particular board game publisher, designer, a group, Ivy Studio is the board game publisher, and I got like really friendly with them. I'm a mod on their Discord. I know the folks personally now, and they are based out of Nashville, Tennessee, and we've gone down there a couple times to visit them, see their studio, just because we're friends, and it's cool to to hang out down there. It's a nice area. Uh, there is a convention down there called Tennessee Game Days. They have like a spring variant and a fall variant. They do it twice a year, and I was introduced to it there. But the cool thing about this particular con is it's there's no like expo hall or anything. There's people maybe buying and selling games, but they're all very local kind of thing. No big companies there, except for maybe some local companies like IV Studio, where they'll come in and maybe rent out a small room near the area just for like their community to hang out. And that's what we did. And somebody brought out Blood in the Clocktower, and at the time I was like, I don't really have much interest because I'm not a big social deduction game fan. And I'm still not really, to be honest, except for this game. I played my first game with a storyteller that didn't super want to storytell, and I don't really think he has heart in it. And I didn't really have a good time, honestly. It was passable. It was actually, if anything, a little negative. and I didn't play again for a full year until the exact same con happened the next year. And one of my friends from that group loves it and was storytelling. I knew that he was storytelling from the year previous as well, doing crazy 20 player BMRs and things like that. And I thought to myself, like, what are you doing over there behind that book you got? What's that thing? So knowing what my experience was the year prior, I said, I don't really want to play this, but I'm kind of interested in what you're doing. And I walked around and I just basically co-storytell with him. I mean, I didn't really do anything, of course, but I had played literally one game, I think, to that point. And this was 2023, I think. Maybe something like that. 23, 24. And I fell in love with it. The storytelling aspect of it. That's really what started me on my Clocktower journey, so to speak, was the storytelling piece of it. And then I learned that convention is only 3 days. That was I guess 4, because we were there on Thursday. That was by Saturday. I was storytelling Trouble Brewing. On Sunday, I was storytelling BMR. Maybe I was going a little fast, but at the same time, I was hooked. I was immediately hooked at the idea of creating these circumstances for these players to just do their thing, and for me to watch on the sidelines, knowing everything. And there were a couple of mistakes, of course, but it was really enjoyable. And from there, it was just, I never looked back. And it was, I eventually learned to also love playing the game. I started in storytelling and I had to learn to play, basically, because it was a backwards way that I did it. But now I'm at a point where my favorite thing to do is storytell. Second favorite thing to do is probably script build. And then I also enjoy playing the game as well.
When did you end up getting to actually play a second game?
It was, wow, what was my second game played? I think it probably was that weekend where I started storytelling. I think I ended up sitting down for one of them to give it another shot. And this time it was with my friend storytelling, who was way better than the storyteller from the year prior. So it was that weekend, I believe.
I do love how I've heard so many people who have that initial you find the game and it's just nothing but Clocktower for a long time. We have a local convention here in Kentucky, and a year, it was about last year. We had 2 or 3 people who who were there for the convention to just kind of do generally board games, and they would jump into a Clocktower game, and then that ends up being all they do all weekend was just Clocktower. It's really great.
It's been my life for the past year. I've done nothing but Clocktower. I've played so few board games because the majority of my time has been spent on Clocktower.
I bought way fewer board games over the last few years. Part of that's because my friends don't really play, so I don't really have many people to play with. But honestly, my interest is not that I don't like board games still, obviously, but Clocktower, just it's sometimes I'd watch a Dice Tower, and they sometimes call games lifestyle games. It's where it's kind of like Magic the Gathering, for example. People who play Magic the Gathering, that is their game.
Oh, yeah.
They spend a lot of time just not necessarily exclusively doing that, but that kind of concept. And I think Clocktower is that for a whole lot of people. It's hard to play casually, I guess. Not to say you can't, and not to say that nobody does, but yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It's interesting to see who's played online first and then played in person, or vice versa. So it sounds like you got to play in person first. What was it like jumping online to play eventually?
So about 98% of my games played are online. I've played probably less than 10 games in person, maybe even less than 5. how was it when you're talking when we go from that in person to online? It was fine in the very early beginnings of it. I didn't know really where to go. Like there was the unofficial, of course, that I saw, but generally speaking, when a Discord server has that many members in it, I generally shy away from it. Maybe that's not fair to the Discord server. Um,
That's
I,
fair. Yeah.
yeah, for this particular one, I found out later that that was fair of a reaction for me for me to have. So I just kind of looked around on the various communities that were doing this. I was watching streams, like everyone else. I also enjoyed the NRB videos. Right, it was all the content that was out there. I
Hmm.
was consuming it, and my biggest hurdle from going from like a few games in person to online was trying to find a home, and I didn't exactly know what the best place was because I wanted a vibe that made a lot of sense. And I'm not going to shill for them too much, but Grim Scenarios is absolutely the place where I landed. It was just a breath of fresh air from a couple other areas that I snuck into and just kind of just lurked honestly for a little bit. Um, and yeah, like the vibe there is just right up my alley. Again, I won't shill too much for them, but that is
Uh,
ultimately my answer to this. Where it's like if you could find a good home base to play online, it's just it's so much easier than I've only played I think one or two public games in my life, public online games. I don't really want to ever do that if I can. I really would prefer to never have to do that, and I never do on Grim Scenarios because there's just always something going on.
yeah. I never mind shilling for grim scenarios. They're good people over there. A lot of people know me as somebody who really likes discussing the game in a variety of places. And I'm in a lot of Clocktower servers, like a lot of people are. But the reality is, you can only concentrate so much on so many servers. So, Grim Scenarios is definitely one of the handful of servers that I make sure I keep up with. Just kind of see who's chatting, what good conversations might be happening, where I could chime in and insert my own thoughts or rules answers. Yeah, yeah, I like
Yeah,
doing scenarios for that. Like I said, we don't mind shilling them here.
nice. Yeah, I appreciate every time that I see you in there, giving your 2 cents. It's always well received.
It can be hard sometimes because obviously Milk and Emma and so many other people there are also just really good with the game and very knowledgeable. So sometimes it's hard for me to say anything that they haven't already said before I jumped in. So, what do you think Blood on the Clock Tower has that other social deduction games don't? That made you interested in this game, but not some of the others?
It's a really good question. Um, well, at first, it was the DM aspect, right? The fact that there is a person who's pulling the strings and providing the experience for someone else. I've been a game master before, not for D&D but for a different RPG system, and I've played in a few RPGs before, so like I'm very aware of that kind of idea of somebody who is providing the experience to the players. um, that is really what drew me in because it was a cool like hybrid between social deduction and RPGs,
Hmm.
and that was very very interesting to me. Uh, that set it apart instantly, and then the quintessential other things about Clocktower that sets it all apart, like all unique abilities. There's life after death, so to speak. Just everything everything else about the game fall madness. Everything else about the game falls into place really really well after I sunk my teeth into the fact that like I can provide really fun experiences for people, and and that allowed me to immerse myself into the world, so to speak, of Clock Tower, which then got me to be okay with playing it as well. Because like, oh, I know how these interactions work because I storytell these. I could probably bluff that, and there you go. Then it's just I'm down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's great. When you sit down to play a game, you're about to draw your token. Do you hope that it's a blue token or a red token?
Generally speaking, I hope it's blue, to be honest. I'm okay with pulling red. I don't think I'm as good at it as I should be. So, like, I enjoy pulling red for the sake of practicing.
Hmm.
Uh, but I like when I'm playing the game, I like the puzzly aspect of it, where you're taking the piece of information and you're trying to deduce socially and mechanically. I love mechanics, but socials are obviously important too.
Hmm.
Where you need to go and who whatever your win condition is, depending on the script, how you achieve that win condition. Um, what I'm learning to love as evil is specifically as the demon is how that's a puzzle too. And like we're looking at the Oho token here, right? Like that's the ultimate puzzle for better
Yeah.
or for worse. But
Hmm.
Oho is very much a puzzly demon in the sense where like you need to grim read if you want to kill the people you want to kill. And that in and of itself is a puzzle. Pucka, another great example of a pucka. You really need to grim read if you want to be an effective pucka, so you know where to poison who when. Uh, that puzzly aspect of it is really what I like.
Are there specific kinds of characters you prefer to play? Like, do you prefer the information characters or maybe like the power characters?
I You start knowings are really fun. You just have your one slice of the pizza, right? That here's my contribution. um, you can still yourself build worlds and gauge socials and so on and so forth, but it's such a more chill way of playing the game. I don't want to always do that because that's sometimes you're looking for a more meatier experience. Some people use the word sweaty, like that's perfectly fine if
Hmm.
you're into that. And every once in a while, I am into that. Every once in a while, I want to pull a lycanthrope token and see what I could do and see who's going to be willing to fall on the sword for the sake of my ability. Uh, it varies, but I'd say that that's probably the much more chill, laid back. Like I could just kind of observe from afar and see how my information interacts with those power rolls. Like I'm a knight, come get me, lycanthrope, no problem. This is great. Like this, I'm a good kill for you. That kind of thing.
Yeah, I know every time I watch a stream with Ben Burns and he pulls, something that doesn't really do much, like a butler or you start knowing role, and he's like, "Oh, great, this is awesome! I can just spend my time just talking to people."
Yeah,
I
well, he
know.
has chat too. I can
Yeah, that's
imagine
true. That is
having
true.
to figure out, who he's gonna exorcist pick next. It's gonna be difficult when you have a million people, shouting at who they think you should pick.
Yeah, and I was thinking about the flip side of that. Yeah, like the lycanthrope. You mentioned that as example, or where that's a little bit more because sure a knight wants to die, but maybe an innkeeper or an exorcist doesn't, and it's a little more pressure. I've had one player on here, Blake. He plays in my group. We talked to him, and for him, the absolute worst thing that could happen to him is him draw an information character that he has to sort out and puzzle out because he likes social reading, so he likes those characters where
Mm.
he doesn't have the pressure. He can just sit back and do whatever.
Yeah, I get that. That's the beautiful thing about the game is that there's a role for everyone, but at the same time, you got to be able to roll with the punches with whatever it is that you draw it to.
Exactly. I say often that the game is what you make of it, and in an ideal world, obviously not everybody's going to like everything equally, but in an ideal world, you can draw your least favorite character and still have fun with it.
Yeah, yeah. The players matter too.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of related to that, is there any characters that you prefer not to be?
Prefer not to be. Um, Not really. Honestly, I can't really think of like I don't mind outed evil stuff. Just looking at the things that are on the script, I don't mind outed evil stuff. I don't mind high power stuff. I don't mind information stuff. Even a mayor could be interesting. You know what I mean? Where you're just trying to you're trying to play that social balancing beam kind of thing where you look suspicious in the beginning of the game, then you look trusted at the end. A very fascinating way to play that character, but that's the best way to play it, I think.
And I love that too because it's on Trouble Brewing, so that's something that the game's trying to teach you, right out of the gate.
Exactly, yeah. I guess maybe something like atheist might be a thing I wouldn't want to pull. And then more specifically, if atheist is on the same script as drunk, that's not a puzzle that I think is particularly interesting for me, at least. I want to know what my win condition is, and if I pull atheist, then I know what my win condition is. And I'm not a big fan of very high warping win condition games. Like, I don't think I'll play Amnesiac atheist games personally, just because that's a combination that I'm not a big fan of. An Amnesiac can make something look like an atheist game, and that's fun for some folks, and I totally understand that. But I don't really find that to be all that much fun.
Yeah, that's fair. And yeah, I guess that's the point to the game is that there can be those games, and there can be games that aren't that. Yeah, and everybody's got different tastes, so yeah.
Yeah, I'm also on a bit of an arc right now, an anti-goblin arc. I'm sure I'll be okay with it in the future, but I've just had a few too many rough games where the good team claimed goblin just too much, and people were having fun. Don't get me wrong, and I was having fun too. But I do like a game that can be worked on, and we can get achievable, unless it's like an intentionally silly script that's over very quickly, or teensyvilles that are over very quickly. But if I'm sitting down for a full 12-player game of something that is probably going to go a full 5, 6, 7 days, and everyone and their mother is claiming goblin, I don't know what to do. So it's kind of like currently something that I'm not a big fan of.
That's fair. I do think there's something to be said for, as usual, we want everybody to have fun and enjoy it. Either because they regularly do this, or sometimes just it kind of happens on accident. I have been in games where it feels like it was being leaned in a little too much, and it's like, this is fun, but also I am trying to play a game, and it feels like it's hard sometimes.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it too. Like, people are allowed to have their fun, and more power to you. But it's a team game. You doing that, and you doing that, and you doing that. What am I supposed to do now? I'll do that, I guess. Are we playing a game anymore?
Yeah, and it's hard to know where to draw that line, I guess, and there's probably no real answer, but just part of the joys of navigating, I guess, social dynamics in general.
Yeah, exactly.
Are there any particular characters you like to bluff, whether you're good or evil?
Ooh. I like bluffing hidden outsiders, I think. I don't really think about this too much. A lot of the times it's script dependent, right? A lot of the times I hard claim something that is related to my role in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
But if I'm just going over with a broad brush, I think hidden outsiders, claiming those are fun, because depending on the hidden outsider, it could dramatically swing how an evil player would approach you, like with their abilities. If you're just claiming damsel, could you be the damsel? Could you not be the damsel? That's causing confusion, obviously, for the evil team. Now, granted, it's causing confusion for the good team too, but it's not like it's detrimental to the good team necessarily at that point. If I'm claiming politician and I'm not actually the politician, that has obvious repercussions for the evil team if they start trusting you as the politician and thinking that they can get you on side. What's another one? Plague Doctor is one where if I draw a Sage token, I might want to bluff Plague Doctor. If they believe me as being the Plague Doctor and they try to kill me, then there you go. I just got what I wanted with the Sage. So I think if I wanted to say, like, generally, I think hidden outsiders are a cool thing to bluff.
Yeah, makes sense. I kind of want to talk about politicians since it's on here, and when I ran this a little while back ago, and again, that video's on YouTube, go check it out. Um, well, I say go check it out. Then I'm about to spoil the ending of it, but well, let's just say a politician played a major part, and I ended up awarding them an evil win for how they played. So I guess it's interesting to talk about how you feel because there's a lot of different thoughts about what a politician even needs to do in order to turn evil and win with evil. So do you have any thoughts, I guess, on the politician in general?
Yeah, I like politician quite a bit. I think that I agree that some storytellers run it too loose. I think I've also seen a couple times the opposite, where the storyteller runs it a little bit too tight as well,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like they wanted even more out of the politician to get them to turn. Um, I think the my philosophy with it is if the evil team is going to win, and if they absolutely would not have won without the help of the politician, and you can't fathom any other worlds where they would have gotten to this endpoint without what this politician did. If that's true, then the politician should probably turn, in my opinion. It's hard to quantify that because you have to now, like, your brain has to go down these other paths of like, well, if the politician didn't claim village idiot and claimed something else, and that would have made this village idiot be the only one, their information would have been true, and then what would have gone down that way? It's near impossible to do that, but that's what I try to do. And you can't, in my opinion, just leave it to like, they nominated a particular person, and that was what gave evil the game. Like, sure, that's maybe a big deal, but if you compare it to all the things the minions did that day, that game, all the things that the demon did that game, the demon killed all these people. Like, you have to compare it to that as well. You
Mm-hmm.
can't say the politician's ever going to do more than killing 10 people in a game, obviously. So I don't necessarily believe in the whole, because the actual ability text, of course, is uh, if you were the player most responsible for your team losing, you change alignment and win even if dead. Uh, I don't think that you have to be more detrimental than the demon killing people, but
All
you need
right.
to be very supplemental to that to be able to turn. It's a judgment call every time, and if if it's not something that if the effort's there, then that's great. But it needs to have like the outcome too, the results as well.
Yeah, and it is a tough one. For me, it's probably a bottom tier character. Uh, Mostly, I don't know. I think it's probably for me the least interesting way to turn evil. Um, Partially because it is so vague as to how to turn evil. Um, I try not to blame it too much on storytellers because a lot of characters are good characters, assuming that their story told well, and I just prefer to assume that's being story told well. But yeah, I did like the game that I ran. The last time I ran it with a script, and I did turn the politician. And this wasn't enough by itself, but one of the things he did was he got to a final three, and then purposely chose not to try to nominate a demon. Uh, Obviously that's a big step, but yeah. On top of that, he was bluffing the village idiot and very effectively. And I believe, in my opinion, that it was a big part in the demon even getting to the final three. So,
Yeah,
yeah, it just. But I guess that's the other thing too. Is like if I had decided that okay, he didn't turn. Well, now he's probably going to feel at least a little bad, even if he doesn't mean to or take it personally. And then if I do turn him, there's some others who probably feel bad that we have this player who he could have won the game for us, but he chose purposely to to do this other team. So some people are going to like that, some don't. I don't hate it. I just think it's not super interesting, um,
I think
but
it
it's
it
fine. Yeah.
falls nicely in the outsider category, right?
Oh yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's detrimental for the good team, but it is in general on the good team. Um, Two comments that I have about this is number one, I love politicians who work for good. I think that's really, really interesting. And I think that's really bluffable, which is even more interesting, where a politician can secretly do things that are hurting the good team can seem like they're helping the good team and being like an outed politician. And if they have something crucial at the end of the game where you've sown incorrect information, you've framed the wrong people, you've pushed worlds that are just incorrect, but you're outed as like a good politician, and at the end you do something pivotal to make the evil team win, I will of course give the politician that win, even though they're over here saying, I'm a politician, I'm playing for good this game, and they're trying to gain that social cred. I think that that's really interesting in a way that the politician can be run. The second thing
lives very much up to the name of politician.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like it's all just a face. In the background is where they're doing the nefarious things. But the second thing about, especially on this script, like if you have a good interaction with politician to that give them that platform to turn, like Vizier, that makes it even more interesting because now the politician has a beacon that they can go to check in and to speak directly to the evil team in some way, shape, or form, and literally politic for that for what they're trying to achieve. Or the other way, play for good, seem like you're talking to the Vizier and playing for evil, and give the evil team wrong information. I just think there's so many interesting ways that you can play the politician. I do understand your point though, where it gets hard on a social level.
Yeah. And Nina brought up an interesting point talking about a different character that, politician can be played in a similar way as a goon, which of course is not an experimental character. It's a Bad Moon Rising character. You might have a goon that can play the whole game for evil, or they might get that last minute decision where they have a chance to win as good. But they know that if they just don't nominate a demon, they'll get chosen, hopefully, and turn evil that night and win with evil. So that's an interesting comparison too, I thought. Yeah,
I think it's very similar, the two roles. Mm-hmm. I think depending on what else is on the script, it could be that similarity can become more broad because a politician will never register as evil, as opposed to a goon. A goon will just register as evil when they're evil. And depending on the other roles that are on the script, you have empath, you have village idiot on here, you have lycanthrope, technically. All of that will interact way differently with a goon than it will with a politician. And the politician is able to stay completely under the radar if they wanted to, as in that game that you have in your channel. And that's the nefarious difference between the two. Obviously, there's a mechanical difference too, where the goon is going to be drunky people. Mm-hmm. But that's not really an apples to apples comparison. That's just a thing the goon does.
Yeah, something I like about this game in general is that there are a lot of characters who on the surface do the same thing, but they accomplish it in a very different way. Ogre is, for me, my favorite character, and to me that's a super interesting way to turn evil. And you have a friend, you don't know if you're on the same team, but you know you're on the same team.
Yep, exactly.
Really even between like Trouble Brewing and Bad Moon Rising, you have Washwoman who gets to learn 1 or 2 players as a townsfolk, and usually I believe probably 99.5% of the time you're going to figure out who that person is. And then the Bad Moon Rising has a grandmother who does it in a very similar way, and maybe less than 99.5% of the time, but like 97% of the time you're going to for sure know who your grandchild is, and they're going to confirm each other. Very similar things, but they accomplish it in a very different way, and I enjoy that.
Yep. Knight, Steward, Knight, Noble. All that trio of characters all have some kind of nebulous confirmation, well, semi-nebulous confirmation with them. I guess just Noble is the nebulous one. But they're all in that same kind of category, yeah.
I saw a lot of people when Knight came out say that Knight is just a worse fortune teller, which I completely disagreed with. I mean, maybe in a pure power level, yes, but also that's not inherently bad. Like you don't like fortune teller can be easily a very broken character on many scripts. And
how many Knights get framed? versus fortune tellers?
Actually, to be honest, I probably don't see a knight well enough to know, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I get that point. Yeah, it's just a nice character. Oh, you learn 2 players. You don't need to execute these players to win. Nice and simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that's not on the script, but I think it's interesting to talk about is madness characters. So obviously stuff like Sarah Novus and Mutant, experimental characters. You got Pixie and Harpy. So how do you feel about madness in this game?
I think it's really cool. I think the concept of it is really great, and it adds a lot to the game. I think it's a difficult mechanic to properly get your head around. You see all of the new Clocktower circles that are playing S&D for the first time. You see all the nods, the winks, the nudges, that are related to madness, and it's something that, like, under normal circumstance for a new player coming to the game, you're having fun. Like, oh yeah, I'm mad as this, totally mad. When in the reality of the game, like, you need to actually claim this, and this how stringent that is makes it even more interesting, because the intent of the ability, of the effect, if you will, is to misinform.
Yeah.
At least with the negative characters, right? With Sarah Novus, with Harpy, and I guess with Mutant. Having Pixie in there, of having a positive madness character, that is a space that I would love to see explored a whole lot more, because I think that's the only, like, positive madness character that we have.
I believe so.
And
Yeah.
it's a great thing. I feel like Pixie should be on more, like, newer player scripts, customs, right? But things that, not that Sarah Novus doesn't teach about madness well, it does. But the idea of a player saying, hey, here's this carrot that I'm going to dangle in front of you. If you do this thing well enough, you get to have the carrot. And at that point, the player will learn by the end of the game if they did it well enough, if they've enjoyed their carrot or not. I think that that's a cool thing that I wish there was more of.
I do love Pixie a lot. Probably my favorite townsfolk. I think it's really good. I have been trying to be better at running Madness even more strictly than the past. I won't go too much in detail because I've already talked about it on this show a few times recently. But it's my biggest regret lately was a while back ago. I ran an in-person game, and there was a player as a mutant, and then for most of these players, it was their first time playing S&B. And he went around, and his claim to everybody was that he was a townsfolk, but he had no information. And that's, like, really all he did. And I kind of really regret not executing that, because, like, I think it ended up being pretty obvious. And I'm like, and I'm not saying you have to, as a mutant, like, go around claiming information, but I feel like at a certain point, like, S&V, I think, is the perfect example of how madness works, because it's hard to be a good player without any information whatsoever. Snake Charmer, maybe, but even if you're a Snake Charmer, you're probably putting out misinformation about who you had already picked.
It's like Sage, I think. I think that's the only one I could think of.
Yeah, I mean,
at that point, just claim Sage.
Yeah, and then at that point, it's on the Sarah Novus. It's like, okay, well, you picked someone to be the Sage, and now they're claiming to be Sage, and everybody's like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wish I had executed that, but alas, lessons learned. I do always like to think of madness as, hypothetically, if I asked town what they thought you were claiming, what would they say? And my example usually with that was I had a Pixie who, I can't remember what they were being mad as, but they were supposed to be mad as a character. And they were kind of doing 2 for 2s and 3 for 3s. And I literally overheard a conversation in town square that didn't have him in the town square. They said, "Hey, what's so and so claiming? Or do you know what he's claiming?" Everybody's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know." And this is like day 2 or 3. And after I heard that conversation that night, the player who had that character died, and I decided not to give him that ability because nobody even knows what he's claiming. So I don't know. For me, that's an interesting metric to think about, at least for Sarah Nova's Madness.
Yeah, it's risk reward, right? When it comes to Madness and Pixie specifically, because there's a
Mm-hmm.
reward. Um, if you're not willing to take the risk of claiming that role, then you don't super deserve the reward, unfortunately, because that's just kind of how the character works. It's a bit of a different way to go about Sarah Novus. It's still risk reward, except the
Yeah, yeah.
reward is that you get to stay alive. The reward is that congratulations, because of this risk that you've taken of abiding by the madness, you don't get the reward of death.
So speaking of Madness, I mentioned how that debuts in Sex and Violets. So it's probably a good time to talk about the base scripts. So how do you see each base script in relation to each other? What's your favorite? Which is maybe your least favorite, etc.
Yeah, TB is the best script ever. Next question. It's just the best. There are
Which, to be fair, I have had at least one person say, I don't remember which script they said they're the best. It was not Trouble Brewing, but their favorite. They said it's like maybe Batman Rising is my favorite script. It's not the best script, but it's my favorite. TV is obviously the best. So I guess technically those are different answers.
it's funny you mention that. I watched your interview with Avery.
I think Avery was the person who said that. Yeah.
What she said is exactly the way I feel, and like down to the specifics where BMR is the best script with the worst characters. S&V is the worst script with the best characters. And TB is just objectively the best out of all of them. And I agree with that so wholeheartedly because TB is never going to get old. There's new things that you can discover about it in every 10. I mean, of course, it's a scale. Eventually, you'll learn almost everything, and it'll take you 50 games to learn another one. But it always surprises you with more things that you didn't realize can happen. And that's just kind of what slots it in. It's just objectively the best script, in my opinion, which I guess doesn't make it objective. Putting that aside, I love BMR. I'm a big BMR fan. I like the mechanics of it. I like the power of the multi-kill demon. Just like in terms of my favorite demons, Shab and Pucka are probably 1 and 2, maybe 2 and 1. Just because I really enjoy those demons. It's mixed with other like who who likes minstrel? Do a lot of people like minstrel? I don't think a lot of people like minstrel. It works on BMR, sure.
I'm sure somebody somewhere does.
Yeah, maybe.
I haven't met them yet, but
Yeah.
if you like minstrel, get a hold of me. Maybe we'll have you on Hard Claim.
It's a great idea.
Nina likes minstrel. She has told me she likes minstrel, but I think it's just because she likes music and musicians. So.
Well, sure. Yeah, that's awesome. It works on BMR, and that's great. S&V for me is still very, very good. It's just it doesn't have quite as much of what I want in a Clocktower game, and I'm not going to say that they feel samey because it doesn't. S&V's got a lot of different things that can happen in it, but they do kind of all revolve around the information piece and that puzzly thing. Earlier in this interview, I said how much I love the puzzles. You'd think that I would love S&V for that, but it's raw power against raw power, and I think it's probably maybe the least balanced out of the three base threes. I know that there's metrics of like how long was spent on balancing these scripts, and I know that TB had by far the most. But yeah, if I were to rank them, TB has to be first. BMR is maybe a close second for me, and then S&V.
Yeah, makes sense. I've said it 100 times. TB for me is the most consistent experience, like consistently high quality experience. For me, S&V, which is my second favorite script, has higher highs than TB, but also lower lows.
Sure, I can see that.
And BMR is probably about the same way. BMR is my least favorite, but I still like it. And I always like to talk about, too, how BMR is a good test for storytellers' timing a game.
Yes.
Try to tell people, if you're on your 7th day of a Zombol game, you don't need to give town 5 minutes to talk.
Definitely not. Yeah, that's something that running BMR games have helped me as a storyteller with my timing in general. I just recently, small tangent, I am moving away from the app timer because I had a very bad habit of exclusively using the app timer. And I've gotten myself a little digital timer that I just literally have right here on my monitor because it's better, and I'm understanding the nuances as I storytell more of the ebb and flow of day lengths is important for balancing purposes too. That sentence would have never come out of my mouth, months ago, but I'm understanding it now, and having this down here is very helpful. But that's a tangent from BMR because BMR is you're gonna have those Zombool Mastermind games. You're gonna have them, and it's a delicate balance between making sure the game is brisk and also making sure that the players are not going to meta your day lengths. Oh well, clearly it's a Zombool. Clearly it's a Mastermind because these days are like 2 minutes. It's hard, but if you can stay consistent no matter what your demon is, and you have a constant cadence of like mine currently, and I think you were actually talking about this in the Grim Scenarios Discord one time, but it's
Probably.
like 6 5 5 4 3 2. It's around where my timings go. I'm starting to shorten that now to like 5 5 4 3 2. But that's roughly where I'm at with it. I know you agree. I know you like those shorter days.
Yeah, and I've been going quicker than that even.
Public chat.
Yeah, because you mentioned before a full game of full 12-player game, which stuck out in my mind because I tend to run a lot of like games that are much bigger, or sometimes much bigger than 12 players. So yeah, those bigger games are like 15 plus. I'll do like maybe like 5 5 for whatever, kind of drop it down from there. But like if I have 12 players, probably do about four or five on day one, and then dropping it down from there. There's a little bit of flexibility. I'm still surprised that the app ever added a public timer, because I would have thought that's something that TPI would have not wanted in the game, because it's not something you'd normally have in a game. You don't normally have public timers. Like, it's not a thing. I don't think it does anything good for the game. Private timers, I'm a fan of my soft timers. Basically, exactly what you said. In person, I have a stopwatch. It helps me just kind of, because I'll lose track of time if I don't have a stopwatch, just flat out. I've tried using my phone, and I'll look at the time. It's like, okay, it's 5:58. And then I'll look 3 minutes later, and it's like, okay, it's 6:01. What time did I look at it last?
Yep.
I don't know. Has it been 2 minutes? Has it been 5 minutes? I don't know.
Yep.
And I have my Stream Deck here for my online games. It's very handy, but I got multiple timers set up, so that is that for that. Brain, add private timers, please.
Really nice.
Looking back on this script again, Vizier, I think, is an interesting character. So I'm curious about your thoughts on a character like Vizier, which obviously is as outed evil as you can possibly get in a character. So how do you play a character like Vizier, and how do you think about it in general?
That question is different on this script versus some other scripts, just because of how, like, what the intention is on this script is versus a lot of others. Like, if if there's a lunatic in play, and you as the Vizier are woken up night one, and you are told, hey, this player's the lunatic because of Stormcatcher, you now have a completely different game to play, especially if it's also a Poppy Grower game.
Mm-hmm.
You need to kind of intuit what the storyteller did. Is, if you're in a Poppy Grower game, is the lunatic in a Poppy Grower game? There's marionette on the script. If it's a 12-player game, it's very possible that the lunatic was shown you and a marionette as minions. So it's very touchy on how Vizier plays on this particular script. In general, Vizier probably shouldn't be with Papa Grower, because it adds that, like, what am I doing as the Papa Grower, and it can feel bad to some folks. On here, when you have the addition of the lunatic as well, there might be multiple, and a politician, there might be multiple reasons for good players to come up to a vizier and say, I'm evil or I'm the demon or whatever. And that's kind of what balances that. It fosters that kind of a play, for better or for worse. Uh, I think Vizier is really interesting. I think that the mechanics behind it is really nice. Knowing when to push a vote through and when not to push a vote through is very fascinating to me. Like what's your hand count, right? How many hands have to go up uh, before you say sure, I'll push that through? How many of those hands have to be good? Are you okay with there being only 4 hands up if all 4 of them are good? Are you okay with 6 hands up, but your whole evil team is in it? Probably. It becomes a really interesting puzzle of when you want to push stuff through. And then there's a whole bunch of other interactions that are really fun that don't even come from this script, like investigator and vizier, magician and vizier. There's a lot of cool things that interact with the vizier. And sometimes players don't want to be out at evil, and that's totally okay because it's a way different way to play the game for sure.
Yeah. I've never been the Vizier myself, but I've seen people have a lot of fun with it. The first time I played in a game with Vizier was actually at when it debuted at Clocktower Con 2023, now Final 3 Con, and it was a game that Milk was running. He had his script outed and he tested Vizier on it. I'm actually not sure if Vizier's still on it. I think maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I can't remember. The player just kind of went around trying to not exactly strike deals, but just trying to have people make their case. Like, hey, do you want to be executed if if you're nominated, or do you not? So it can be pretty fun. It's also a good example of how community can be important because there's a lot of places where being the vizier just means nobody's going to talk to you or will get upset at anybody who does talk to you. So I think it says a lot that you didn't even bring up that point at all with it. It shows the kind of places you're playing in.
Yeah, you're completely right. That's not something I think about too often, just because of what you said. It doesn't really happen a whole lot in the spaces that I play in, but I've seen it. I've seen it before, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't feel good. It's sad, really. Like you as a player pull this vizier token and you're ready to have some fun, or even not, right? Even if you pull the vizier token, you're nervous now because now you're maybe a more shy player and you have to play as an out of evil player. And on top of your nervousness, you're also not being spoken to, and you feel like for no pun intended, you feel like an outsider, and it feels bad. And any kind of out at evil player can feel that way, and that's something that needs to not be a part of your space. Like
Yeah.
part of the Grim scenario's best practices is to make sure that you're talking with dead players and you're talking to out at evil players. There's a reason why that exists, because both of those players, dead players of good or evil, and then all out at evil or suspected evil players, they tend to get left on the sidelines because, oh, well, you're not going to help me solve the game because you don't have any ongoing information, or because why would I talk to you because you're on the evil team? What are you going to give me that helps me win this game? But it's not about winning the game. It's about having fun.
This makes me think to go back about timing of the game, because I also think having quicker games, or really I think of it more as, yes, private chats are important, but like the game was kind of designed to focus more on the circle and people talking in town. So I think having games that shorten the private discussion phase but focus more on the town talk, Vizier is a good example of why that can be better for a player who would otherwise have a rougher time. If you got 7-8 minutes to chat, and yeah, some people are going to talk to you, but even when people are talking to you as a Vizier, that's going to be a little different. But when you're in town square and you're figuring out what you're going to do with nominations, that can be important.
Yeah,
that's your key time. Yeah, Evil Twin can be kind of similar. Really, lots of characters can. I think. The longer a game goes on, I think the easier it is to start feeling bad about the game. My absolute maximum I try to keep a game is at 2 hours, and nowadays I try to keep it even much shorter than that. In my experience, after 2 hours, when people really start getting Just irritated or irritable. Just kind of
Detached.
detached. Yeah, more likely to snap at one another. So, we've departed now away from the Vizier again, but that's fine. But we are, pretty much at the end of this anyway. So one last question before we go that we like to ask. Looking at this script here and the characters that are on it, which of these characters would you like to be in real life?
The Golem.
Interesting.
I think it would be super cool to be huge, made of rock, and be able to punch people.
Yeah, fair enough.
It is
Pretty
such a
nice and straightforward.
It's such a cool concept. Golems in general, like there's a couple IPs that I'm a fan of with like RPGs, and there are golems in them, and they're just always the coolest people for me to talk to in those RPGs because they're like they have these weird pasts and sometimes tragic, sometimes heroic, and it's just really cool because they're like you're a person, but you're not a person, but you can do the things a person can do.
Years ago, and you can still kind of play this now, but I played City of Heroes / City of Villains, that MMO. You play, well, as the name implies, a superhero or supervillain. And I had my main was a character called Two of Rock. Doesn't mean anything, but his power set, he was a brute, so he was mainly an offensive character. And I made the character model about as small as he could be, but both his primary and his secondary power set were rock. It was just fun. This little bitty guy, puts a rock fist on and just punches somebody, or stomps on the ground real hard, and yeah.
Yep, I like that a lot.
Yeah. All right. Before we go, is there anything you would like to plug?
The only thing I can really think of is there's a script competition that's happening right now for the Final 3 Con, which you can see me there as well. Come say hi. I'm going to be a little nervous because I don't know a lot of people, but
Nina and I will be there.
Yeah, awesome. I'll see you guys there. And it's run by Nocturne Gaming, Atreides and all of them over there. Good people. And I have a script in that's in the top 8. That maybe check it out. Check out the other ones as well. They're all really good. But that's another thing I could really think of plugging right now is, of course, you can find me at Grim Scenarios.
Yeah. Of course, yeah. What's the script called?
Out of Myself is the name of it. You can find it on the script website as well.
Excellent. All right. Well, Angelo, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right. And thank you all for watching. We'll be back next week with another episode of Hard Claim.